The first time I realized silence could be dangerous, I was standing in a place meant for prayer, not fear. And the thing that saved me wasn't courage, it wasn't strength, it was an accident, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Naomi Brooks, and I'm speaking to you now as a woman who has lived long enough to understand how the past doesn't stay buried just because we wish it would. Some memories wait patiently, quiet, watching. And then one day they rise up and say, "Now, you're ready now." I'm sitting at my kitchen table as I tell you this. Old table, scratched corners, coffee ring stains I never bothered to scrub out. Morning light coming through lace curtains I stitched myself years ago, back when my hands didn't ache the way they do now. There's a pot of tea cooling beside me, chamomile and honey, same way I make it every day. Routine keeps me steady. People who know me now would call me calm, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who listens more than she talks. They see the grandmother, the church-going neighbor, the lady who brings sweet bread to funerals and casseroles when babies are born. What they don't see is the girl I used to be, and that girl learned very early that danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. I grew up in a small southern town most folks pass through without noticing. One blinking traffic light. One grocery store, one church everyone claimed was the heart of the community. On Sundays, you could smell fried chicken drifting through open windows before the final hymn was sung. From the outside, my family looked like everybody else. Hardworking, God-fearing, respectable, my mother kept the house clean and our clothes pressed. My father kept his voice low in public and his smile tight. Folks used words like solid when they talked about us. But inside our walls, things felt off, like furniture rearranged in the dark. My mother was my anchor. She moved through life carefully, like someone always measuring her steps. She laughed softly, loved deeply, and somehow managed to shield us kids from questions we didn't yet know how to ask. When she looked at me, there was warmth. When she looked at my father, there was calculation. I didn't understand that then. I was just a child who learned how to stay quiet when grown-ups spoke, how to disappear into corners, how to read moods by the way keys hit the table or doors closed a little too hard. The day my mother died, something in the house shifted. The air changed, like a storm rolling in without thunder. People filled the church with kind words and casseroles and prayers that sounded practiced. I sat in the front pew, my feet dangling above the floor, hands folded so tight my fingers hurt. Everyone kept telling me to be strong. Nobody told me to be alert. By the time the building emptied and footsteps faded, I was alone in that sanctuary with the one person I feared most. And none of us realized the room was still listening. That's where my story truly begins. After the service, adults moved the way people do when they don't want to stay too long with grief. Quiet hugs, soft condolences, promises to check in. One by one, they drifted out into the parking lot, engines starting, doors closing, life already pulling them forward. I stayed seated. No one noticed at first. I was small, dressed in black that didn't quite fit, shoes pinching my toes. My legs felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I stared at the pulpit where my mother's picture had stood just hours earlier. Her smile frozen in time. Calm, protective, gone. That's when I felt it. That feeling you get when someone is behind you even before you turn around. My father sat down beside me without asking. The bench creaked under his weight. He smelled like stale cologne and something sharper underneath. Not alcohol, something colder. "Come on, Naomi," he said quietly. "It's time to go." His hand rested on the back of the pew, not touching me but close enough that my skin prickled. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt locked. He leaned closer. "Your mama ain't here to fuss anymore," he added almost casually, like he was talking about the weather. I finally turned my head. His face looked different without people watching. The tight smile was gone. His eyes didn't soften the way they used to in public. They searched my face, slow and deliberate, like he was taking inventory of something that belonged to him. Fear didn't hit me all at once. It crept, slow, quiet, settling into my chest. "I want to wait for Aunt Renee," I whispered, naming the first person who came to mind. He shook his head. "She already left." The church felt too big suddenly, all that space and nowhere to hide. My heart started racing, but my body stayed frozen, like it hadn't gotten the message yet. His fingers closed around my wrist. "Not hard. Don't make a scene," he repeated, softer this time, like he was offering advice instead of a warning. His thumb pressed lightly into my wrist, right where I could feel my pulse jumping. I remember thinking how strange it was that he could feel it too, how he must have known how scared I was just from that. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because my body understood something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. Compliance felt safer than resistance. He stood and tugged gently, guiding me toward the side aisle. The church was empty now, but it didn't feel abandoned. The air still held echoes, prayers, singing, footsteps that hadn't fully faded. Sunlight slanted through the tall windows, dust floating in it like tiny witnesses. As we walked, my shoes scuffed the floor. The sound felt too loud. Every noise did. Behind the pulpit there was a narrow hallway most people didn't notice. Storage rooms, a small office, a place the choir used sometimes. I'd passed it 100 times without thinking. He steered me that way, my chest tightened. "Daddy," I said, my voice thin, unfamiliar. "I'm tired." He didn't look at me. "You'll rest at home." But he didn't turn toward the exit. We stopped near a small door half hidden by a curtain. He reached past me to pull it open. That's when panic finally caught up with my legs. I tried to pull back. His grip tightened instantly, like he'd been waiting for it. Not enough to bruise, just enough to remind me who was bigger, who was in control. "You want to end up just like your mama," he hissed under his breath. The words knocked the air out of me. My mother's face flashed in my mind. Her careful movements, the way she always seemed tired even when she smiled, the way she'd step between me and him without making it obvious, the way she'd say, "Stay where I can see you, baby." I understood then, not everything, but enough. He pushed the door open and nudged me inside. The room was small, narrow, one flickering light overhead, folding chairs stacked against the wall, a table with old papers and a radio sitting on top of it. I stumbled, catching myself on the edge of the table. "People think they know everything," he said, closing the door behind us, "but they don't know a thing." My ears rang. I could hear my own breathing, fast and uneven. I wanted to scream, but my voice felt buried somewhere deep, like it had been wrapped up and stored away. He stepped closer. That's when something unexpected happened. A faint hum filled the room, low, constant. I didn't recognize it at first. I thought maybe it was in my head, my fear buzzing so loud it sounded real. But then he spoke again and his voice sounded different, slightly distorted, like it was echoing back at us. He froze. "What the?" he muttered, turning his head toward the table. The radio wasn't on, the microphone was, and somewhere beyond that thin wall the building was still listening. For a second, neither of us moved. The hum grew louder, sharper, like it had just woken up. My father stared at the table, then at the microphone sitting there so casually, like it belonged in any other room on any other day. A small thing, ordinary, easy to forget. I didn't understand it right away, I just knew something had changed. "What is that?" he asked, more to himself than to me. He stepped away from me and reached for the device, tapping it once, then again. His voice came back through it, thin and metallic, bouncing faintly through the walls. "Hello," he said. The sound made my stomach twist. Hearing his voice like that, stripped of warmth, stripped of control, felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. His face tightened. "This damn church," he muttered. That's when it hit me. The sanctuary, the speakers, the system they'd been so proud of installing just weeks before. I'd watched men test it after Sunday service once, laughing as their voices boomed back at them from every corner of the room. I remembered thinking it was funny, magic almost. Now it didn't feel funny at all. My father turned back to me, eyes sharp, calculating. "You didn't touch anything, did you?" I shook my head quickly. The hum stayed, patient, waiting. He took a step toward me again and fear surged, but this time it wasn't alone. Something else was rising with it. A fragile, trembling hope I didn't dare name yet. He grabbed my arm again, harder now. "You ain't gonna say a word," he warned. "You hear me?" Before I could answer, a sound echoed through the room, not his voice, someone else's. "Is anybody still in here?" The words floated in, distorted but clear enough. A man's voice, older. Steady. My heart slammed against my ribs. The door handle rattled slightly from the other side. My father let go of me like I'd burned him. "Stay put," he snapped, backing away. His hands shook just a little, not much, but enough for me to notice. I didn't stay put. The moment his grip loosened, my body moved on instinct. I darted past him, yanked the door open, and ran, bare feet slipping on polished floor, breath tearing out of my chest. "I'm here," I screamed, the sound breaking as it came out. "Please help me." The sanctuary looked different when I burst into it. Bigger, brighter, safer. A man stood near the sound booth, eyes wide, frozen mid-step. He took in my tear-streaked face, my shaking hands, the way I flinched when my father appeared behind me. "What's going on?" he demanded, voice firm now. My father tried to speak, tried to smooth his expression into something normal. "She's just upset," he said quickly. "Her mama," but the microphone was still on. And this time it wasn't just listening, it was telling the truth for me. The man near the sound booth didn't move right away. He didn't rush. He didn't shout, he just stood there, eyes locked on my father like he was trying to see past the words and into the space where truth hides. "I heard everything," he said quietly. Those 3 words landed heavier than any scream could have. My father laughed, short, sharp, fake. "You heard a child crying," he said. "That's all. Today's been hard on her." The man shook his head. "No, I heard what you said." And so did the speakers. Only then did my father look around, really look, at the empty pews, the open doors, the sound system humming softly, doing its job without emotion or mercy. Somewhere in the back of the building, a door creaked. Footsteps? Another voice calling out, asking if everything was okay. My father's confidence cracked just a little, but I saw it. He reached for me again, reflex more than plan, but the man stepped between us without hesitation. "She's staying right here," he said, calm, solid, unmovable. "You can wait outside." "You don't know what you're talking about," my father snapped, his voice rising. "That's my daughter." "And that," the man replied, "is a child who's terrified." More footsteps now. 2 women from the church. A man I recognized from the choir. Faces peering in, confusion turning quickly into concern. The room filled with sound again, real sound this time. Whispers, gasps, someone asking what happened. My father backed away slowly, hands raised like he was the one being threatened. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said. "You people always think the worst." No one answered him. I was shaking so hard I had to sit down on the front pew. A woman I didn't know wrapped a sweater around my shoulders. Another knelt in front of me, asking my name, telling me I was safe now. I didn't answer. I just stared at the floor, trying to understand how everything had changed so fast. The man who'd heard the microphone spoke again. "I've already called someone," he said. "You're not leaving with her." My father's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to me one last time. There was anger there and something else, something cold and final. "This ain't over," he said, but his voice didn't echo anymore. He walked out alone. That night I didn't go home. I slept in a stranger's guest room, wrapped in borrowed blankets, staring at the ceiling while my heart slowly learned how to beat at a normal pace again. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow felt like it might move. But underneath the fear, there was something new, space. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel dangerous. It felt like the beginning of being heard. Morning came quietly, like it was afraid to wake me. I opened my eyes to a ceiling I didn't recognize, painted a soft cream color with a faint crack running along one corner. For a moment, I forgot where I was, then my body remembered before my mind did. My stomach clenched. My shoulders tensed. I pulled the blanket closer around me, even though the room was warm. A woman knocked gently on the door. "Naomi, sweetheart, you awake?" Her voice was careful, kind in a way that didn't push. I nodded before I realized she couldn't see me. "Yes, ma'am," I said, sitting up. She opened the door slowly, holding a mug in both hands. "I made some cocoa, thought it might help." I took it with shaking fingers. The heat seeped into my palms, grounding me just a little. I hadn't realized how cold I felt inside until then. Downstairs, the house was already busy in that hushed, serious way adults get when something bad has happened. Voices stayed low, phones rang and stopped. People used my name like it was fragile. I caught pieces of conversation without trying. "Sheriff's on his way," microphone was still live, "can't send her back there." No one asked me to explain, not yet. They let me sit at the kitchen table and sip cocoa and stare out the window like my mind was somewhere else, because it was. When the sheriff arrived, everything slowed again. He was a tall man with tired eyes and a calm voice. He crouched down so we were level, like he knew standing over me would feel wrong. "Naomi," he said gently, "I need to ask you some questions. You can stop any time." "You understand?" I nodded. The words didn't come easy. They snagged in my throat, tangled with fear and guilt and loyalty I didn't yet know how to name. But once I started, they didn't stop either. I told him about the way my father watched me, the rules that only applied to me, the warning looks my mother used to give without saying a word. I told him what happened in the church. When I finished, the room was very quiet. The sheriff stood up slowly. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "Nothing." That sentence felt strange in my ears, like a language I didn't speak yet. I didn't see my father again that day or the next. What I did see was my life being quietly rearranged by people who decided I mattered, bags packed by someone else, phone calls made, decisions discussed in rooms I wasn't allowed into yet. By the end of the week, it was clear. I wasn't going back. I stood in the doorway of the house I'd grown up in one last time, escorted by adults, collecting a few clothes and my favorite book. The place felt smaller than I remembered, meaner. Like it knew its power over me was gone. I didn't cry, I just closed the door. And somewhere deep inside, the girl who had learned to disappear started learning something new: how to stay. They moved me 3 towns over to a place that smelled like pine trees and laundry soap. A yellow house with white trim, a porch that creaked when you walked on it, nothing fancy, just steady. The woman who took me in was named Mrs. Calder. Everyone called her Miss Joe, even grown folks. She had soft hands, strong arms, and a way of looking at you that made lying feel unnecessary. She didn't ask many questions. She didn't rush me, she just showed me my room and said, "You're safe here, that's all you need to know tonight." Safety felt unfamiliar, like a coat that didn't quite fit yet. At night, I still slept curled tight, listening for sounds that weren't there. Footsteps, doors, breathing that wasn't mine. Sometimes I woke up convinced I'd heard my name whispered low and dangerous. Other times, I woke up crying without knowing why. Miss Joe never complained. She'd sit on the edge of my bed, rub my back slow and steady, and hum old songs without words. She didn't tell me to be brave. She didn't say everything would be okay. She let me feel what I felt. School was harder. Kids have a way of knowing when something's different, even if they don't know what it is. They stared too long, asked questions that weren't really questions. Someone whispered once, and the word church floated through the hallway like smoke. I stopped raising my hand, stopped meeting people's eyes. I learned how to shrink again, but this time it wasn't because I was scared of being hurt. It was because I was scared of being seen. One afternoon, after I'd been there a few months, a woman pulled me out of class. She introduced herself as Dr. Lena Moore. She wore bright scarves and had a voice that felt warm even when she asked hard things. "We're just going to talk," she said. "You're in control." At first I told her nothing. I talked about books, about how I liked drawing, about how I missed my mother so much it felt like a hole in my chest. She listened. Weeks passed before I said his name out loud, before I said what he almost did, before I said how the microphone saved me. When I finally did, my hands were shaking. Dr. Moore didn't flinch. "Your body did exactly what it needed to do to survive," she said. "And now it needs time to learn it's not in danger anymore." That idea stayed with me. Because even when the world moved on, court dates, paperwork, adults talking about consequences, my body didn't. Loud voices still made me jump. Men standing too close made my vision blur. Churches became places I crossed the street to avoid, but slowly in that yellow house with the creaky porch, something softened. I started leaving my door open at night. I started laughing again, quietly at first, like I wasn't sure I was allowed. And one evening, while helping Miss Joe wash dishes, she said something that settled deep in my bones. "What happened to you doesn't get to decide who you become." I didn't answer. But for the first time, I believed it might be true. Time didn't fix me, but it taught me how to live around the cracks. By the time I turned 16, the sharp edges of fear had dulled into something quieter. Not gone, just folded neatly into the background of my days, like a scar you forget about until the weather changes. Miss Joe's house became the closest thing I had to home. I learned her routines. The way she tapped the spoon twice on the pot before setting it down. The way she locked the doors every night, even though this was a safe town. She said it wasn't fear, it was care. I started to understand the difference. School got easier once I stopped trying to disappear. I wasn't popular, I wasn't loud, but I wasn't invisible either. Teachers noticed I listened. That I paid attention, that I remembered things. One of them, Miss Carter, started letting me stay after class to help organize books. It was quiet work, predictable, safe. Pages made sense when people didn't. "You ever think about college?" she asked one afternoon. The word felt too big for my mouth. People like me don't really, she stopped me gently. People like you survive. That's not nothing. That night I stood in the bathroom staring at my reflection. Same eyes, same face, but something had shifted behind them. I didn't see just a scared girl anymore. I saw someone who had been heard. The case ended quietly. No drama, no speeches, adults handled it. Papers were signed, doors closed. A chapter sealed away in files and memories. I wasn't asked to relive it again, and I was grateful. On my last Sunday living with Miss Jo before heading off to a small college out of state, she hugged me longer than usual. You don't owe the world your story, she whispered. But don't ever forget it tried to silence you and it failed. That night I packed light, just clothes, a notebook, and a voice I finally trusted. I'm older now, older than Miss Jo ever was when she took me in. Life carried me forward, jobs, love, loss, joy, quiet mornings, loud laughter, long years. I never went back to that church, but I don't avoid churches anymore either. I learned something important over time. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means remembering without breaking. Sometimes people ask why I speak so carefully, why I listen so closely, why I never interrupt someone when they're trying to explain themselves. I don't tell them everything, I just smile and say, because I know what it feels like not to be heard. That microphone didn't save me because it was loud. It saved me because it refused to turn away. And maybe that's the lesson I carry with me still. Pay attention, listen closely, because sometimes the truth isn't screaming, it's waiting. If this story made you pause, if even one moment felt uncomfortably real, then it wasn't just a story. Somewhere right now, someone is sitting in silence, waiting for a sign that they're not alone. Sometimes that sign is a voice. Sometimes it's your share button. Backhand index pointing right. If you're still here, it means this story reached you for a reason. Please like this video so it reaches more people who need it. Subscribe to the channel if you believe real stories matter. And turn on notifications because the next story might be the one that saves someone else. Speech balloon, comment below with just one word, heard, so I know you stayed till the end. And if you know someone who's hurting in silence, share this now, because being heard can change a life.